So, has everyone tried starting the Spring container by creating instance of class path XML application context? Is it working fine, guys? No issues, right? No XML configuration error, nothing. Good. So now let me take you to further things. Just a second. Minutes. Okay, so let's move on to next thing. We have confirmed that Spring container is up and running, but we have not yet, what do you say? We have not yet retrieved the ready-made Spring Beans. So I will ask you the same old question. After this line is executed, how many Spring Beans are there in the containers heap, as in Java heap? How many Spring Beans exist? 4 is the correct answer. And is there any wiring between, is there any link established between dependent and dependency? Answer is yes. Somebody saying no. Who is saying no? Like, guys, read this careful. What is this line doing? This is nothing but a linking. Your Spring container is taking the test bean reference and assigning it to your transport. So instead of dependent object managing the dependency, Spring container is managing for you. Okay. So now coming back to the point, we have done this. Now I want to retrieve the bean and I want to execute the business logic. So open the Java docs, Spring API docs, and if you see the root interface where everything starts is a bean factory, which is a provider, which is nothing but a Spring container. So open the interface bean factory and you will find there are so many means overloaded get bean methods. So here is the get bean method. And there are, like I said, there are a couple of them. So here, look for a generic get bean method. And I'll show you here. And take a look at it. Read the description, please. I'm going to ask you a question. So like answer in a careful manner. Okay. So this is a generic method, as you can see. This is not a generic interface, but non-generic interfaces can contain generic methods. So here, what is it you are supplying is the name of the bean. So like I had told you earlier, bean ID is nothing but a bean name. In JSP colon use bean, we use the attribute ID. In JSP colon set property, we use the attribute name kinds. Okay. So this is nothing but a bean ID or bean name, whatever. And here you have to supply the bean class. And what will your container do? Container is going to find out from the namespace, from that XML configuration file, or from that from the heap, the bean corresponding to this ID, and it is going to return the instance. So I have a question. Who is going to call this method? Be careful. Programmer or Spring container, SC or programmer? Who is going to call this method? Programmer or the container? That is what I was worried of. Guys, container, why would it want to get the bean? Container is the bean provider. Spring container is the bean supplier, bean factory. Who is going to call this method? Us programmers, so that we can get a ready to use bean instance, which has been located, loaded, instantiated, dependency injected, and later I'll show you the initialization also. So who's going to call this method? Not the container. We are going to call this. Okay. So before we call this method, I'll just tell you one more tag. We will add something and then we'll call this method. So let me show you. We had completed till lazy init. So everyone knows bean tag attributes ID, class, and the scope. We're going to play with it, but over time. And here you also know lazy init. Now read next to attributes and tell me whether it reminds you of any servlet JSP lifecycle. Just read this. So which are the next two attributes we are talking about? Init hyphen method and destroy hyphen method. So keep this in front of you. Let me ask you a question. Which is the first life cycle method in a life of a servlet? Everyone knows the answer. I'm just trying to connect the dots. I mean, make you connect init. What is that in JSP? JSP init. Very right. So forget JSP. JSP is nothing but a translated servlet. Focus on servlet. So when will web container call the init method? Okay, I'll rephrase the question. You should have that servlet lifecycle ingrained in your brains. So what is the first thing? Either loaded on startup or later, either eager or lazily. Loading. So first locates it from WebINF classes. Locate, load, instantiate. So yes. So here the servlet instance was created in the server side heap. After that, directly it was calling the init method, or was there a step in between? Yes, what was the step in between? What you are saying, request, first request and all? Yes, servlet config. So guys, servlet config was nothing but the dependency of a servlet. So instead of servlet creating its dependency as a servlet config, web container was creating a servlet config object. If you provided some init parameters, you remember init parameters on the last Saturday, I guess. I mean, one of these days, we had created that. So those parameters were injected. That is nothing but dependency injection. And then init method was called. That was the story of a servlet. Now come to the story of Spring Beans. Spring Bean, the default scope is singleton and default loading policy is eager. So singleton and eager are the two key terms you keep, you remember. So here Spring container will start the life cycle of singleton eager Spring Beans right at the container startup. Okay. And at that point, so when I take you to web applications tomorrow, I'll say at the web application deployment time. Today, when does a Spring container start? Whenever you are creating that application context instance. So what will container do? Locate, load, instantiate. And then it will see if there are any dependencies. So it will do the dependency injection. And after dependency injection, the first method, currently dependency injection is via setter. So after that, your container will check, is there any init style method? So what is the meaning of my word init style method? What I mean is, it is a custom initialization method. Meaning, should there be any specific name, or can it have any name? Answer is any name. This is the flexibility. See, in servlet's lifecycle, because our servlet was extending from HTTP servlet, we had to use the fixed names such as init, destroy, do star and all. Spring is extremely flexible. It says you give any name. Okay, so any name, but there is a pattern. The method has to be public void, public and void returning. It can include in the throws clause exception if it requires, and there are and then you can write the body. So I'm asking you a simple question. Who will call this init method in the life of a Spring Bean? Easy questions. Of course, Spring container. Be careful with the next answer. How many times? Wrong answer. Try again. Okay, partially correct, partially wrong. Let's see. I'll give you a clue. If it is singleton, how many times? If it is per context is wrong answer. And I'm giving you here. Let me finish, guys. If it is singleton, how many times? If it is prototype, how many times? So now tell me. S for singleton, P for prototype. Answer. For singleton, exactly once. Because bean instance is created once. No issues. But for prototype, how many times? Once per demand. And how do you make a demand to the container? Get me that bean. That method is context.getBean. Is it making sense? So this is what you are going to observe soon. Okay, so that's your init style method. And likewise, okay, I have written. So called by the Spring container. And is it going to be called before dependency injection or after? Like in a servlet, it was getting called after servlet config was injected. So here also after all dependencies, I've just talked about setter based. Later you will see setter based, constructor based, factory based. After all dependency injection, this gets called. Is it going to be called in both type of beans? 100% yes. Next one. Opposite method of init is destroy. So here again the same thing. Any name. Container is not specific at all. You can call it by any name. And who is going to call it? Of course, Spring Container. How many times it will get called? So before I answer that, this method is not applicable to prototype. Later I'll give you, I've drawn a diagram. Singleton versus prototype. Important one, popular question. So here it is only applicable to singleton beans. Prototype beans are the ones which you create per demand. So container says you have to clean up the prototype beans. So we Spring Container will call destroy kind of a hook, lifecycle hook I'm talking about, lifecycle method automatically. But in case of prototypes, this doesn't get caught. So I've written everything. Before what? Before garbage collection of a spring bean and towards the end of the life cycle and only for singleton beans. Okay. So these two methods we will add and I've given you in writing. How does a programmer, how does a user means programmer, get ready to use spring beans from Spring Container? When I say ready to use, the ones which are loaded, located, loaded, instantiated, dependency injected, and initialized. By the way, none of it is compulsory. If you have nothing to initialize, you remember in servlet days, we never overrode the init method. We were inheriting it from generic servlet. Likewise, in Spring Bean, if there is nothing to initialize, why will you say init method? If there is nothing to clean up in singleton, you will remove that. It's an extremely flexible life cycle. Okay, so coming back to the point, how to get ready to use beans which are located, loaded, instantiated. In case of dependency, dependency injected and initialized. Answer is already given. So what goes in is the bean name or bean ID, whatever. And here you have to supply the bean class. And what will container do is, container will give you ready to use bean. And after that, what is the only thing you have to do is invoke the business logic. So 90% of the jobs, or okay, whatever, is container doing. Your just concern is, your just job is to call the business logic method and use the beans. So last question, and we'll try this out. Does this API remind you of anything learned recently? Answer is yes. So tell me which one. Please give me a correct answer so that I'll know that you are still there and you are connecting. Does this remind you of anything which we have learned recently? We have. Just stretch your memory. Yes, absolutely. Session.get. What is, no, not JPQ, Lakshita. Session.get. What are the arguments of session.get? They're just reverse swap. First, you supply the pojo.class and serializable ID. Here, the arguments are reversed. First, you give the bean ID and then give the bean class. But it's one and the same. Okay. So why don't we try this out? First, let us add the init method. Open your ID. Okay. And go to your dependent bean class, ATM implementation. And here, let's add the lifecycle hooks. Means I'm using the reactors, but you know that. So the point is lifecycle methods. You know. So here, let us add the init style method. So what is the rule? Public void any name, or okay, I'll say any init. I mean, I'm just giving some name. It should be argumentless method. Currently, I'm just going to put SOP. But if you want, you can also add throws exception. It is allowed. So unlike your init method, which you can allow, which allows only servlet exception, more flexible here. So add a SOP in init. And here, try to display the dependency. I have a question. What will be the value of dependency here? Null or not null? 100% not null. And what does it prove? What does it imply? The dependency or the init style method, which is called as custom init method. This is my own init method. It is not coming from the framework. It is not coming from Spring API. Custom init method gets called by the Spring container before DI or after DI. Answer is after. After dependency injection. DI is dependency injection. And which type of a dependency injection I'm showing you initially? Setter based. Okay. So, and let's add the any destroy. When I say any and all, you know what I mean. Or custom init, custom and destroy. Okay, custom init is better. Any method name. My own init method, my own destroy. Because there's nothing coming from it. Where I have said override and all that. My own method, our own method. And here, say in destroy, my transport will be still not null. So custom destroy method gets called by Spring container only for which bean? Singleton or prototype? Singleton. So beans when just before the garbage, sorry, just before the garbage collection of beans. And the dependencies would be still there. And what will trigger the garbage collection of the bean? So that will be triggered by closing the context or shutting down the Spring container. So understand me? Sending you this so that you can save the comments. A very valid question, Anshumala. You'll get the answer in a minute. Have I finished the discussion? Why you're being so eager like Spingleton beans? Wait for a second. So here, you have added the custom init method. We have added the custom destroy here. So here, Spring container is going to manage it. But like how I got a very valid question, Spring container is not a magician. So guys, you are not paying enough attention. So what are these I told you about? These are the attributes which we are going to add in the bean tag in the Spring configuration file, which will tell the Spring container the name of the custom init and destroy methods. Okay, so that is the answer which I had already supplied. I mean, certainly I had supplied. So after adding these methods, go to your bean configuration XML and let's add more. So till now I had added ID and class. Let's add another one here. See where I'm adding. Keep this. This is a bean tag attribute. This is not a property tag attribute. And simply say init. Read the description. Currently, I'm just going to read it in a fast manner. You read it whatever slow manner in your own revision, self-study time. The name of the custom init method to invoke after setting the bean properties. So what they are trying to tell is after setter based DI. And now if you say control space, Himanshu and Ansumala again, I remember asking answers. So guys, container doesn't know. Container just fits the pattern. Public void, no args. So these are all inherited from object class. I don't want cloning. So here you supply custom init. And here you supply custom destroy. So let me finish a particular statement and then, like I said, I already mentioned it. I started with the init hyphen method and destroy hyphen method, bean tag attributes. So it has to, you have to make a complete, you have to focus and understand it. So now let me ask you, after these three lines are whatever executed, parsed, 3 bean instances are sitting there in the heap, correct? Now, after this line, so tell me, after this line, will container start the, what is it called? Start the bean life cycle? Yes. Why? Singleton and eager. It's by default, it is eager initialization. So what will be the first line you will see? In the constructor of ATM. What will be the next line you will see? You tell me. Will it say in it or will you see setter? In it or setter? Of course, setter. First the DI, setter based DI. So first the setter, then you will see in it. Since we are not currently calling any business logic, we are coming to the end of it by closing the context. And for a singleton bean, will container call the custom destroy method or will it not? Answer is 100% yes. Why don't you confirm? So run the test spring again to understand spring bean life cycle, which is, trust me guys, maximum questions are asked. When you say that, okay, I have used Spring framework in my project, these things are like more than asked. Okay, so observe. So these are your dependency beans created. Dependency beans can further have dependency graph, but I have just gone one dependent, one dependency, that's it. So are the setter based dependencies available during instantiation? No. So here is the setter based DI thanks to that property tag. And by the time it called the init method, are the dependencies injected or not? Are the dependencies available or not? They are available. Are you getting this? And then container says, okay, then yes, it has started successfully. And is it calling the destroy method when the context is shutting down, when the application is shutting down? 100% yes. And the dependencies are still preserved. After that, everything is marked for garbage collection. Understood the life cycle of a spring bean using the code. I mean, I've not written the business logic method, but this is the life cycle your spring container follows. Understood or not? Tell me. Isn't it same as servlet? Are you relating it to servlet life cycle? I hope now you'll get that all these things were done for a purpose. I told you long back. Are you really going to use in your projects a servlet like technology? Answer is no. But is the servlet basis of everything, or that is where the life cycles are derived? 100% yes. Okay. So now let's take a minute. Where are we? Yes. And here we have not done any business logic. Okay. So here I want to invoke business logic. Which business logic? Something, anything. Let's say deposit funds. Okay. So tell me, deposit funds is the method of which bean? Deposit funds is the method of which bean? Quick question, quick answer. Whose method it is? It should not take you so much time. Yeah, dependent bean means what? ATM bean. Give me the name. So in this case, should I create, I as a programmer, should I create a ATM implementation bean or where is that console? Or is it already created? Answer is it is already created. Locate load instantiation. See this. Locate load instantiation, dependency injection, and init. So what is it I have to do? I have to just get the bean. Okay. So write it in comments. Get already located from that build path, runtime class path. Located, loaded using what? Class dot for name, instantiated, dependency injected. So currently I'm showing you setter based. Later I'll take you to constructor based and all of that. Setter based dependency injected and initialized. Get already this ready to use spring bean. And which spring bean I'm talking about? ATM bean. From who is requesting whom for what? You are not requesting, you are demanding, okay, request order, whatever. You are telling spring container, get me that bean so that I can call the business logic. So from the get already from the spring container. And that is where that API comes in. So you see this OSBF. I'm saying it is easier to remember in the short forms also. ORG Spring Framework Beans Factory is the name of the package. And the name of the super interface where everything starts is a bean factory. It has got a method. So it is all the methods are public. It's a return type. So it's a generic method. So type declaration fits between method modifier and the return type. The return type is T and the method name is getBean. I'm purposefully writing the API so you'll remember it automatically without any extra efforts. And first goes the bean ID, or you can say bean name, and then goes the class. The second argument is bean class of type T. T is nothing but the type of the bean, right? And it includes in the throws class. If you mess up in the bean ID, I have given the name something like my ATM. If I say something else, of course it is going to throw you the exception, the beans exception. Is it a checked exception or unchecked exception? It's a unchecked exception. All high-end frameworks, Spring, Hibernate, JPA, Spring Boot, they translate the checked exceptions to unchecked so that programmer is not forced to handle it. Means what? Tomorrow, if you comment this try and catch, still compiler doesn't give you errors. So I just have to use it. So let me get it. ATM implementation. Let's say ref1. And I just have to use the context.getBean method. Use that version, which I explained. So here, match. It is in J2E, it is all about matching, understanding and matching, right? So test ATM. Oh, test Spring I meant. I have a bean ID. And here the bean classes ATM implementation dot class. Okay. And here, now we have got this is a ready to use bean. So simply invoke the business logic here, ref1 dot deposit. So see the 90% things bean container, Spring container doing it for us. All these things are done. All you have to do, and that too just today, wait for tomorrow, and even this code will vanish. Every day you'll be learning something more interesting and reduction of code. So coming back to the point, this is your ready to use bean. We just call the business logic method. Now let me check your understanding. I hope you will give me correct answer. So what is it I'm doing here? This was my first demand. Okay. I made the first demand to the container, and this is where I'm making the second demand. So I have a question. The question is container going to create your bean instance after the first demand, or is it already done? Has it already created? Of course, already created. And why it is so? You are right. But why? Singleton and eager. Okay, eager is a better answer. Eager is a correct answer. Now answer me, when I make the second demand, is it going to return? For example, if I say ref1 double equal to ref2, true or false? True, indicating same. So now tell me, on the second demand, is it going to return the same bean reference? Yes. Why? This answer is singleton. So, there are so many acid tests, confirmation tests. So to check it out. And run this and confirm. And then we are going to change it to prototype and you will observe and conclude. Okay, start. So this is this is where the dependency beans are getting created. This is where dependent is getting created in a singleton and eager manner. This is all at container startup time. You can observe all that. This is not a demand basis. Then this is a setter based DI. Init method, which has full access to dependencies. And then container says, okay, I have bootstrapped, I have booted. And then here we are calling the business logic. So we are informing the bank using which layer? You remember we added the test layer, so test transport. Is ref1 and ref2 the same? Yes, because it is singleton. And is container calling the destroy callback, destroy hook in the life of a singleton bean? 100% yes. So spend a minute here and tell me, understood the life cycle of a singleton and eager Spring bean? Take your time. If you have done good work or good time, if you have invested in servlets, this should not sound difficult at all. And as a summary picture, I already have given you, what is it called? The diagram. So Java EE help, day 12 help, diagrams. No, sorry. Day 12 help, Spring help, and diagrams. And where is it? Spring Bean life cycle. So guys, note down. Note down in the sense, make a mental note. I'm not going to give you in writing that this should be gone through. This is too much of a KG kindergarten. We are in a, what, PG DAC and all that. So here, please go through like how we discussed and spent so much time in what? In your this thing, servlet. So servlet lifecycle was managed by the servlet container, which is your web container. The bean lifecycle is managed by the Spring container, and complete diagram with all possibilities, singleton or prototype, lazy or eager, is fully discussed. So I hope you have made a mental note somewhere to go through this diagram totally. Tomorrow morning, when we anyway revise the important highlights of earlier day, I'll be discussing this, but you should be ready. I mean, you should be prepared to understand it. Go through it once and you will be more than ready. So make a note somewhere. So coming back to the point, now let's play with the things. Okay, so I'll tell you things. Here, make a copy. Let's start making the copies and I will give you in today's lab instructions, open this project for this, import this project to revise this, our usual one. So now I'm maintaining a day-wise sequence. Copy this into Control-C, Control-V. Okay, day 14.1, or maybe I'll call it as day 14.2. Let's take this as a 14.1. Just make a copy. I'm going to show you the work with prototypes. So you can set apart, you can differentiate between singleton and prototype very easily. Have you made a copy? Day 14.2, refer for prototyping. And open the pom.xml. Change globally, Control F, day 14.2. You can call it as, class or something. Replace all. And make the Maven update. Tell me when you are done. So you can make a mental note of this also. I'll give you this. I'll give you because we write a lot of code and then you get confused. So the first one for singleton and the second one for prototype. Okay. So let's open. And actually, I forgot something. I'm so sorry for that. So day 14.2, keep it pending. I want to show you something in a singleton first. So please go to your earlier project. And I have a question. So I'll tell you my question from the output. So tell me, which is the layer your ATM is using currently to inform the underlying bank? One word answer. Which is the dependency which is being used currently? Quick question, quick answer. Test layer. So now I'm saying, I don't like test. It's all mock. It's all dummy. It's just a test. So I want to replace it by my HTTP layer. I want the information sent to the bank using the HTTP transport layer. You understood the question? So here, what we are doing is we are changing the nature of dependency. So tell me, will you have to change the dependent object is equal to ATM implementation? Don't go by the memory, please. Open that. Close. I said close all. I'm going to the earlier project because this one fact I forgot to mention. Open this and tell me, change or no change? You are absolutely right, but I just want convincing, not just by the tone of my question or whatever. No change. Now, the next thing, the tester. Change or no change? In the tester, any change or no change? No change. Where the change has to be made? Obviously, what has to change? The bean configuration file, the instructions. So go and open that and tell me the line number. Tell me the change. What line number, please? Everyone knows that. Line number 14. And simply inject this, replace this by here. So those who are thinking, and I hope everyone is thinking, will say that what is great, what great you have achieved. Earlier you are changing Java classes, now you are changing XML. That itself is a big change. I don't have to make any changes in Java code. But if you are unhappy about this change, I understand that. Wait for something called as, a beautiful concept called as auto wiring. Auto magical wiring, they call it. Automatic wiring. And even this change will go off. So this is only for initial first hour or initial couple of hours. Even this change will reduce to 0. So guys, having said that, please run this and tell me which is the layer which is being used for informing the bank. Is it still I'm sorry, is it still test or have you successfully changed it to HTTP? We are using the HTTP layer. So what will you call? What is the kind of coupling you will call it? Is it a tight coupling or is it a loose coupling? So when you change the nature of the dependency from what? What is that? From test to HTTP, do you have to make any changes in the Java code? Do you have to make any changes in the dependent object? Answer is no. Is it a traditional conventional programming or is it a IOC, inversion of control? It is an inversion of control. Is dependent object managing the dependency or whole business? Creation of a dependent object, creation of a dependency and the wiring. Who is looking after? Who has taken charge? A container. So it is an inversion of control. Instead of dependent object controlling the dependencies, container is managing the dependencies. That is why the name IOC. Understanding? Making sense? So you have to, justify your presence of Spring in your projects, and also I'm just trying to prepare you. Okay, so this was a small point I had forgotten. So now move on to D14.2, the next version. You can close this. And now, what is the next thing I want to show you? Singleton versus prototype. Okay, that's it, nothing. So tell me, if I want to change the default scope from singleton to prototype, what should I change? XML or code? Java code or XML? Everyone knows the answer, XML. So please open, what is it? SRC main resources, bean configuration file, and don't keep changing all to prototype. The main one is dependent bean. So here, add a scope and make this as prototype. Read the description, pop-up description. When you say prototype, independent instance resulting from each call to get bean. When you have such a clear-cut description, you don't need any of us. You don't need the trainers. I mean, when you have such a good description coming from STS, that is why I suggest STS ID, or that is why I had asked you long back, use Eclipse with Spring plugin. So much of nice description, documentation. Anyway, so you are not supposed to, what is it called? Run it. I'm asking you a question. So here, the just one word change is done. Please don't run it. I want to see your understanding. So what is it I'm going to run? We are going to run in a minute. Now you can drop this test ATM. All you have is test Spring. So here is the question. When line number 10 is executed, which is the class which is getting instantiated? Class path XML application context. Means what? What does it imply? What does it represent? You are creating an application environment. Context is an environment. You are creating an application environment that is a Spring container using XML instructions based in or located in runtime class path. So at this point, what will container do? Container will start applying the instructions. So start answering. When these lines are executed, how many beans would be there in the heap? Everyone knows the answer, 3. Now, when this tag is executed, okay, let me say this, the whole. How many beans would be there in the container? Guys, what are you saying? I said, you are not understanding me. The line I'm executing is only the first one. I'm not yet gone to the next lines. How many bean instances would be there? Yes. Swapnil onwards. And you are correctly giving answer. Guys, answer is 3. Here, the moment your container starts solving the bean tag, what is the first thing it is going to check? Scope. So tell me, are prototype beans created eagerly right at the startup or what do you say, after the demand? Answer is 1 per every demand. And this is a booting time. This is the startup time. So in short, will this tag be called or will this be skipped at the power on? Called or skipped? 100% skipped. So once again, how many beans would be there in the container heap, spring container heap at the container startup? 3 or 4? 3. Will there any, is there any dependency injection? Not even thought of it because dependent bean itself is missing. You're going to see this in couple of minutes, all SOPs. That is the reason I had so many SOPs. Now next question. What is happening in this? You already know. Who is demanding whom for what? Application, as in programmer or application, let's say application, is demanding the container, get me that ready to use bean. So this is a first demand. So now tell me, will container still skip the tag or now it has to does it have to execute the tag? Now it has to execute the tag. So now how many bean instances? Additionally, 1 bean. Yeah, 4. 4 is the tag, correct. So now you know the rest of it. So locate, load, instantiate. So you'll see ATM implementation constructor. After that, setter based DI. I'm not touching that. We'll start touching it in 10 minutes. So it's a setter based DI. And then now will init method, will this custom init method get called or not? Called or skipped? Custom initialization or prototype. Answer is called. Okay. So this is the power on condition. You remember init sequence. We used to call it as an initialization sequence in the servlet. Same in the Spring Bean now. So you have got it. Then your business logic gets executed. Whatever, which dependency we have injected, test. So it's a test dependency, right? Okay, so next. Now, here we have made a second demand. So tell me, another bean instance will be created and that would be returned, or the same bean instance as earlier would be returned? Another one, because it is prototype means 1 per demand. So how many bean instances are floating around or are there in the heap? Now the answer is 5. Are you getting it? And naturally, what will be the answer here? True or false? This will be false. And the last question is, when the Spring container is shutting down, is it going to call the custom destroy method on the prototype bean? Answer is no. Container tells you these are your beans, you have called them per demand, so it is your job to clean them up. Okay, in short, the destroy method will not get called. Okay, yes, it is called only for singletons. Run this and becomes so easy to understand Spring container. Today is all the understanding day. Tomorrow onwards, all applications, again the web application and all that will begin. Anyway, follow this. So what will you call this? Dependency creation. All dependencies mean currently we are given a singleton and eager already. How many bean instances in the heap? 3. So here now a container starts. So this is your answer to the first demand. So then we said context.getBean for the first time for a prototype. So then container has to give up the laziness and it has to create the bean instance. Setter based AI exactly the same and initialization. So instantiation, setter based AI init. This is what is this is where we are calling the business logic method, business logic, and this is the response to yet another context.getBean. So tell me, are there two bean instances for two demands, or is it sharing one bean instance across the multiple demands? Answer is two separate bean instances. What is POC? What is proof of concept? Ref1 double equal to ref2. True or false? False. And lastly, is it calling any destroy style hook, any custom destroy method for the prototype bean? Absolutely not. Understood the difference between singleton versus prototype? That is how I'm going to create the copies. So guys, when I tell you that go through this, I'm going to write it like this: import day 14.2 in your workspace if you have not created, and look and understand the prototype bean life cycle. So that time, please don't waste your precious time and looking at all the things again. You just open our bean configuration file, so you'll know how we have changed it. And you just open the tester and you'll know, you'll be like good to go. Getting this? So that is how in the quick manner you're going to do the revision, quick but detailed manner. So this is your singleton versus prototype. And since it is such a famous question, you'll have a diagram here somewhere. So other than the last difference, you'll understand everything. Read. Fourth point, you'll understand little later. So ignore the stateless versus statefulness. So focus on the first three. How many instances of singleton bean will be created? One single instance shared across multiple demands made with context.getBean. Now you have seen, so this should be easy. Whereas Spring Container will act in a completely lazy manner. It won't do anything for your prototype bean unless until you demand. And how do you make a demand? GetBean. Which is the default loading policy of a singleton bean? Eager. Lazy init value is false. Can you change it to true? 100% yes. So we'll play with that in a couple of minutes. But prototype beans are always loaded what? Lazily or eagerly? 100% lazily. How many puppies? One per demand. Means what? It's a trick question. People fool you all the time. I mean, try to confuse you all the time. So if you have a combination, which I'll show you in a minute, scope equal to prototype and lazy init equal to false. Hear me. Scope, prototype, lazy init false. So now tell me, when the container is starting up, will it create the prototype bean instance or will it ignore lazy init flag? Are you understanding what I'm saying? Wrong answer, guys. When there is an answer in front of you, how can you still ask me? I mean, give me wrong question. This thing, lazy init is not applicable. It is always loaded lazily. So you say lazy and it falls whatever you like. Container will simply laugh at you or okay, smile at you and say, okay, I don't understand this instruction. Prototype is equal to lazy. Immediately we'll test it in a second. And this you saw just now for this thing, singleton beans. If you have written some destroy callback, destroy hook, of course it will get called before bean instance is garbage collectible. Here, it does not invoke any destroy style method. So since you gave me a wrong answer and somebody asked me with a question mark back to me again, try it out. Open bean config.xml, which is the current scope of our ATM singleton. Sorry, prototype. Add a flag here, lazy init, and make it as default value itself is false, but just make it false. So lazy false means what? Eager or lazy. Lazy init false means what? Eager. Understood that much? Run this and tell me, what do you observe? So tell me, at the startup, Is any prototype being created right at the startup, or has it ignored your lazy init flag? Making sense? Are you understanding? That there was an answer right there. So container says, once you tell me prototype, you tell me whatever you like. That shows me, I mean, container is telling you, not understanding on your behalf. So the point is, it doesn't care. Prototype means always loaded lazily. So this flag is not applicable. Even if you write it, it won't give you any compile time, I mean, any XML errors and all, but the action is simply not taken. So this was a trick question. Understood or lost? It becomes so easy to test it, test it in a minutes manner. That's why we spend the first day in the understanding part. Okay. So now let's play with the code. So I'll ask you to make changes and I'll ask you to guess the output. Um, guess the output in a minute. You're not supposed to run it, okay? So here, this is fine. Now you make, let's see, start making the changes fast. And here you make the scope equal to some changes. I'm going to ask you to draw the memory picture, not in a detailed manner such as SHM, stack, heap, and method area. Only focuses on the heap. And I'll tell you what I want. Just make the changes, please, same as mine. So the first one is the same. In the next one, add lazy init to be true. And in the next one, add scope equal to prototype. This also scope equal to prototype. Shall I send you? So that we will be in sync. I'll send you the bean configuration file. You tell me when you are done the changes. I'm going to ask you. Done? Okay. So now, all I'm going to ask you is what will be the output. So don't give me the blindly output. You give me a chance. When the Spring container starts, when you instantiate class path application XML context, that is when you are starting the container. So tell me, will this bean be created or skipped? It will be created. Yes doesn't tell me anything. Tell me this tag will be called or skipped. So called. So how many bean instances are sitting in the heap by now? One bean instance of the type test transport. Answer the next question. Called or skipped? 100% skipped. You're saying called. Guys, you're not paying enough attention. Here, this is a combination of singleton and lazy. Tell me the analogy. What is the analogy of singleton and lazy? Give me the analogy of singleton and lazy. I'm just seeing whether you are understood the earlier stuff. Singleton, one instance, and created lazily. Anyone wants to give me any analogy? No, analogy I said. Analogy. No, not yet. The same thing you have seen. You know the word deja vu. You have seen some things earlier and you feel that. Okay. So, Kanad is closer but not still there. Guys, servlet without mentioning load on startup. So when you don't mention the load on startup, when will web container start the servlet lifecycle? On the first demand? I mean, okay, lazily or eagerly? Lazily. That analogy I was asking you. Connect it with the Spring Bean, you will be able to revise your servlets and you'll be able to apply it to beans. So coming back. So here, will this tag be called or skipped? Of course, skipped. So how many instances so far still? Only one instance of test transport. Answer the next question, called or skipped? Skipped. But why? Why? Because prototype. And prototypes are always loaded. Tell me, eagerly or lazily? Lazily. And you try adding here. I just now showed you. Make here lazy not equal to false. Still container will laugh at you, laugh it off or ignore you or whatever. And it will still be created lazily. Okay. Now come to this called or skipped. Simple question, simple answer. Of course, skipped. So guys, at the power on condition means when the Spring container is booting, how many bean instances are there in the Java heap? Only one. And which one is that? test transport. All good. Okay. Next one. So open the tester, and here let us make the first demand. So I just want you to tell me what will happen on the first demand. So come back to no memory based, all understanding based. So now will it have to, what is it called? Execute this tag? Yes, of course. Now there's a first demand. So what will be the output you will see in ATM constructor? Now $1 million. I mean, okay, important question. Here, next thing is what? Locate load instantiation done with a default constructor. Now comes the setter based DI. So it comes to this line. And at this point, is it going to create the dependency, or is the dependency already created? Will create or already created? Why? Because singleton and eager. Guys, I'm just asking you to play with the bean life cycle today. And of course with wiring and all. Okay, so you will see how do you confirm what I'm saying is correct or not? SOPs. So will you see here in test transport constructor or directly in setter? Constructor or setter? Of course setter. And then after the DI, will it call the custom init method? 100% yes. And then the first demand is over. And the same story will repeat for the second demand when I say second time context.getBean. So how many dependent beans would be there? How many objects of ATM, how many dependent beans would be there? 1 or 2? 1. Guys, why are you giving me wrong answer? Dependent, I said. ATM implementation, how many bean instances would be there? Beans means bean instances in the heap. 2. But how many dependencies they will have? 1 or 2? In short, will they be sharing the dependency, or will they have the different copies of dependency? They're sharing the dependency because it is a singleton. So if you are, feeling kind of lost here, draw. I'm of course drawing it for you. So this is the bean configuration file. What is the memory picture? Is what you have to understand it fully. So this is the bean configuration. So at the pour on, suppose I'm drawing this as a heap. So here at the pour on condition, this is your Java heap. I'm not drawing stack and method area. Focus on the Java heap. Okay. So at pour on, what all will get created? Only one bean instance. Okay. So let's have this. I'm just creating a bean instance here. So this is your bean instance. Okay. And mark it as test. I have a question. Should I mark it as test? Okay, I'm talking about this. Should I mark it as test or test 1, test 2, test 3? I mean test or test 1. One instance or multiple. Only one instance is going to be there. So don't start naming it as test 1, test 2. There's going to be a unique instance, unique as a single instance. So this is your pour on condition in the heap. One bean instance nicely created. Now can you tell me after the first demand, what will be the memory picture? Any additional beans or no additional bean? Yes, please. Of course, additional bean. No additional bean, you are crying. Guys, is my English a problem? I said after the first demand, or is your understanding issue? After executing this line, yes, please. There would be a bean instance. Which bean instance? Yes, please. How should I show? Show the bean instance. Another bean instance in the heap. Tell me, should I label it as think and answer? Just my ATM or my ATM 1? Or, ATM 1, ATM 2 types. 1 and 2. Because it is prototype. That is what is the understanding part I want. So let us label it as, something like ATM 1. Of course, the bean ID is my ATM. And here, this is your bean ID. And tell me, after this line is executed, okay, till now, there's no connection, there's no wiring, there's no linking. But after the setter based DI is done, Will there be any link? Will there be any wiring done? Of course, yes. So please show the dependency injection. Just by it has a relationship association. ATM has a transport layer, right? So this is the link established. And since I have not created any other bean instances, this is your memory picture. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. So this was for the first demand. Anyone wants to tell me what will happen after the second demand? Show me. Don't tell me. Show me in the memory picture. What should I show? Another test or ATM2? Everyone I'm sure is following because you are giving a correct answer. So I don't have to worry about you when I hear the majority answering correctly. So another bean instance. You remember? Okay, we were calling it as ref1, ref2. You could have called that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And are we having a separate dependency or is it going to share the same dependency? Of course, share. So here, the same dependency is injected. Now I can draw a box here, as in this is the heap picture. So see what I'm giving you. So I'm giving you the memory picture. I mean, giving you this code also. So that you know, when you do the revision, I'm just putting it here. This was the bean configuration file. So you just have to put few things together and you will be like good to go. So I'll remove all these comments so I can fit it in a smaller space. The moment you understand memory picture, you definitely start feeling better. I hope. So are you understanding it? This is the bean conf, and I'll be sharing this, the whole whiteboard I'm generating for you. So this is your bean configuration. The tester code is more or less going to be the same. I'll hardly change any tester for understanding purpose. And this is the memory picture. Making sense or lost? Completely clear? Because I'm going to ask you to play with it. Okay. So now here, I'll tell you in a reverse engineered manner. Do something so that, listen, okay, I'll give you the question here and I'll give you a minute to this. So what I want is here. I'll draw the memory picture and in the reverse engineered manner, you will give me the changes. So let me make the picture here. I'll tell you what I want. Wait a second. Okay. So I want this. HTTP. I want just at the power on only HTTP. So let me say this here. At power on, I should see only HTTP bean. Okay. This is my question. And in the after the two demands, I want this picture. And after this, I want don't go by the shapes. I did not have the space, so I could not draw a proper circle. So 1 and so 2. Don't jump into the code. Allow me a minute to explain the diagram. And I don't want any sharing of dependencies. Let every bean have its own dependency. So I'll explain the requirement. It will take you a minute, literally, the moment you understand. So I want this. So what is it I want? I want at the power on, how many beans should be there? Only HTTP. And after both the demands are done, are made, I want ATM instance having its own SOAP layer and ATM2 having SOAP2. So if you are wondering why you called HTTP, just to check your understanding, give me. Everyone got this? So let's see, people are already answering HTTP singleton and Prashant, HTTP singleton and eager. Yes, singleton and eager. In short, don't supply scope, don't supply lazy and default it is. Test and SOAP prototype. Yes. And here, the moment you make it prototype, that's it you require. Are you understanding, guys? So all you have to do is keep changing the bean configuration file. So which one I said I want at the beginning? HTTP. So here, HTTP, remove this. When you don't add the scope, default scope is singleton. And what is the default loading policy of singleton? Lazy or eager? It is the combination singleton and eager. And you will see that is what makes Spring so responsive. Responsive means the moment client sends a request, Spring containers, all the beans are created eagerly, waiting for the client demand. And the whole response flow becomes so fast. Anyway, that's tomorrow. So we got this. And I want HTTP bean to be there. So, okay, test. I don't want test here, right? So test, you can make it as. So there are two options. I don't want test. So how to make it disappear? Either make scope equal to singleton, or you say lazy init equal to true. Just play with it today. Sorry. So that you can understand anything, any statement I make throughout the week completely clear. So now tell me, what is this combination I'm talking about? Singleton or prototype? Singleton. Lazy or eager? Lazy. But I'm not going to make any demand. So it will be just like not created at all. So this is fine. Soap is transport. Soap is fine. And here you change it to soap. Am I correct? So just check. So it should be matching with the question. So HTTP bean is, yeah, singleton and eager, fine. Test is singleton but lazy, and I'm not demanding it even once, so it won't be created. So either you make it prototype or you make it singleton and lazy. It's one and not one and the same, but currently it will suffice. And this is your prototype. So naturally for the first demand, okay, let me say this. When you make the first demand, ATM constructor, then is the dependency already created or will it be created after the demand? After the demand. So that will be the first instance because you said prototype. So first instance will be created and injected, and the same story will repeat for the second demand. Okay. So you have today at least 1 to 2 hours. I don't come early. I don't join early. You know that. For the same reason, to give you space. Because once I come in, I can't resist talking to you that way. Anyway, look at it. So, which was the only bean which was created, which was available at the container startup? HTTP transport, which is it, which is done, which is like we got it. Now, what is happening here? What is triggering this? This is a trigger is the first demand. How do you demand? Just call context.getBean with a bean ID. So what is happening? Prototype dependent bean is created. Since the dependency was also prototype, a bean dependency bean instance gets created. This is where your setter based DI. After setter based DI, init method, where all the dependencies are already, but the setter based dependencies are not available during construction, during instantiation. And then this is your so-called business logic, which is using the SOAP layer. I hope everyone remembers this. This is a hash code if you're stuck at that. I've not overridden any toString just to show you where the object, whether it is the same object, different object and all that. Okay. Now tell me further. What is this? What is the trigger of this? Second demand, of course. So when you make the next demand to the container for prototype, is it using the same ATM implement, same bean or a new bean? ATM1, ATM2, of course, a new. Are you understanding the picture? So here is the second bean gets created, but it's not yet dependency injected. But here, if you notice, another bean instance, another dependency, there's no sharing of dependency because it's a prototype. And you can see easily this was SOAP. I mean, you can see there are different objects sitting differently in the heap. And of course, the DI is happening setter based. Init method has it. Two instances are different because they are prototype. And the lifecycle hook, the destroy method callback doesn't get called again because it is prototype. Understanding things, the memory picture and the discussion, completely clear? I'm telling you, spend good amount of time in your first 2 hours of revision or whatever before we just start discussing. So that you know, understanding the next things, all you are going to see is all this will be replaced by annotation. but the meaning doesn't change. The life cycle doesn't change, whether it is a XML managed or whether it is annotation or later Spring Boot. The life cycle and the concept remains 100% same. So spend good amount of time here. So this is what I wanted to show you regarding Bean life cycle and a compulsory exercise. I mean, when I say compulsory, not for me, for you. I'll just get you started so that, you know, you will be interested in seeing what all I've drawn. So who manages? Ignore the spelling mistake. Spring Container is going to manage the whole show. Start the Spring Container. Today we are in Java SE. Tomorrow we will be in web application, and then the story means you don't have to create the instance. There is some entry point called as dispatcher servlet, which will do automatically the booting up, starting of Spring Container. But that's tomorrow's discussion. So today you pay attention to creating the instance of ClassPath XML application context. Now, whether you are supplied XML based instructions or annotations, is the life cycle going to differ or is it going to be the 100% same? Answer is 100% same. Doesn't matter. So what is the first thing container will check? Scope. If the scope is prototype, will it start the life cycle right at the power on? I mean, right at the container startup? Of course not. So Spring Container will invoke the same life cycle per every demand. And how do you demand? Per every invocation of context.getBean. But which is the life cycle hook which doesn't get called is the destroy method. It will directly, again spelling mistakes, marks the bean for garbage collection. So guys, I'm telling you from ahead of things this, singleton and eager is what you're going to configure, which is default configuration. So then you come to the singleton branch and then you have option. You can make lazy init as false, which is a default value. And this is the combination will be working throughout. So spend maximum time in this branch and then you have lazy init equal to false. I mean, sorry, true and all, and rest the entire life cycle. So I have given seriously, I mean, I've given it in complete details. Definitely go through. So I hope you have made a note of it somewhere. Must go through kind of a things. Okay. So now this was your introduction to Spring Container managing Spring Bean lifecycle. But which was the type of the dependency injection discussed so far? Which was the wiring we were using? Is the setter based DI. So is that the only one in the market or can Spring Container support more? Answer is yes, more. So now another must go through diagram. Instead of making you reading pages, if you want to read pages, those are also there, but I will be explaining through the diagram. So the important diagrams are Spring Bean life cycle and the other one is wiring, Spring wiring. So, okay, I'll get us started. I was looking at the time when to give you break and all. So we are going to discuss this complete diagram and I'm telling you, it is written, I've written it in a summary manner and each and every box, I mean block, we'll just create the code. Code means simple changes and all, and you will understand it everything by the end of the day. So that will make you ready to enter or to start creating or to start adding Spring nature to your web applications, which we will start tomorrow onwards. One day, only one thing. So please read the first two lines. These two lines here. Okay, so what we are discussing now, I already gave you since morning we were talking nothing but Spring Bean life cycle. Now I'm introducing the wiring part. So what is wiring? Wiring is equal to dependency injection, meaning IOC approach or conventional programming, inversion of control or this IOC, making the dependencies. When I say dependencies, keep this simple example. Transport layer is the dependency. So making the transport layer available to ATM, which is dependent bean, can be a plain old Java object. Please don't get confused by the term POJO and relate it to Hibernate managed POJO. I mean any Java object, any simple plain old Java object class. But when at a compile time, class loading time, or runtime, of course at the runtime, this whole business is resolved at the runtime. And by whom? By the third party container. So Angular supports full-fledged wiring. I mean, dependency injection. Your EJB container, the one which you don't have, EJBC is also full-fledged, but you have Spring. So we are taking help of Spring container. So now let us come to the, come below. So what are the different two types of wiring? Main categories. One is the explicit wiring, and the other one is called as implicit wiring, but people hardly use this term. Famous term is auto wiring. Okay, so we are into first half. So when I say explicit wiring, what is it? Programmer has to supply everything explicitly. Let me say something ahead of time. All of this, are you going to use in your projects? Absolutely not. But I can't directly use the @auto wired annotation and expect you to understand when I say it is automatic wiring by type. So, we are climbing the steps in a gradual manner. So this is all for understanding purpose, not for a project. Not for the project use. We're just building a base. Coming back here, what is it you have to supply as a programmer? You will have to supply a setter if it is a setter based DI. You will have to supply the constructor, parameterized constructor, like Yash told us earlier, for the constructor based DI. And then I'll also tell you the least used, but yes, approach, factory based approach, etc. So you have to write all of this. And if that is not enough, you have to write lot of XML configuration. Okay, so it is quite heavyweight approach. You have to slog a lot. So I would say focus on this box and let's identify what we have done. We will just convert it into constructor based DI and we'll take our next break or something. Okay. So when I say, or when anyone says setter based dependency injection in a explicit manner, what does it mean? You have to provide setters in the dependent bean. So tell me, which is the dependent bean currently? In our discussion, which is a dependent bean? ATM. What is its dependency? Transport. Keep it simple, light and clear. So tell me, currently, how many dependencies have you configured in the dependent bean? Think and answer. Is it 1 or is it 3? Okay, I got a correct answer. I was, scared that you will give me the answer 3. You have just configured. So if some of you were thinking of 3, you are thinking wrong. So open this ATM implementation. And can you tell me the line number where we have declared the dependency? Line number, please. Line number 8. So how many dependencies your ATM implementation has? One dependency in form of a transport layer. Are we all clear? Soon we are going to increase the list of dependencies. So let me ask you in numbers as usual. I like to clear it in numbers. So suppose there are 10 dependencies. 10 is just a number, you know that. Suppose there are 10 dependencies added in a dependent bean. How many setters will you have to write? 1 or 10? How many setters? Let me see. For injecting 10 dependencies, how many setters you will have to provide? People are saying 1. Come on, guys. It's such a, after doing whole core Java, it is a disappointment. When you say setter, how many arguments you have to the setter? 1. Can you have multiple arguments to the setter? So how many setters, please? Answer is 1 per dependency. So if there are 10 dependencies, how many setters you will have to configure? You'll have to generate 10 setters. Guys, for our Java bean, email and password. was a dependency. So we had to write set email, set password, relate to things. Okay, so coming back to the picture, how many setters? Answer is 1 per dependency. Now at least don't make the same mistake. But just writing the setters is not sufficient. You have to do the hand holding. You have to tell container. So when I say in the middle of night setter based DI, which is the tag we have configured in the bean configuration file, property tag. So if there are 10 dependencies, you will have to write 10 setters, and how many property tags would be there? 1 or 10? Okay, finally learning. Of course, 10. 1 per dependency. And that is when I will say writing so many, what is it called? Property tags is such a waste of time. You remember in JSP, we had JSP colon set property equal to star. Remembering or not remembering? So when you say property equal to star, we did not have to write JSP colon set property tags multiple times. Container was calling the matching setters. So that kind of a business you will see in AutoWire. Not yet. So coming back to the point, how many setters? 1 per dependency. How many property tags? 1 per dependency again. Got me? And that property tag has a name and a name attribute. So this is your name of the property. And when will you use value? For injecting values or the bean references? Obviously values. And when will you use ref? If you want to inject dependency bean reference. So tell me, is this summary box sufficient to give you in a nutshell summary manner setter based DI? Okay, so I'll just have a recap. If you use setter based DI, how many setters you will end up writing? How many setters you'll have to provide in your Java Bean class? Spring Bean class? 1 per dependency. And how many property tags you'll have to add in the bean configuration XML file? Same answer, 1 per dependency. All good? Last question. Will these, I'll show you this. Will these dependencies, setter-based dependencies, will they be available to your two choices? Okay, your choices are default constructor, option 1. Init method, custom init method, option 2. Both of above, none of above. Tell me. I said these setter-based dependencies will be available to default constructor, init method, both of above, none of above. Answer is only init method onwards. So does this remind you again of something? I'll not waste your time. Web container, you in the web programming, in the servlet programming, I had asked you the same question. Servlet is dependent upon servlet config. So tell me, could we access the servlet config object? Okay, forget, scratch. If you access servlet config object in the default constructor, what was the value? You remember this? Null is the correct answer. And when you access the same thing in the init method, null or not null? 100% not null. And you remember we were using configuration, get servlet config dot get init parameter and all of that. Isn't it the same? So, I'm just asking you to draw parallel and making you comfortable. So this is what you already know. So what is the slight limitation? I'm saying slight. What is the slight limitation of this approach? In this approach, your dependencies are not available during instantiation. So let me ask you, everything I'm going to relate to servlet. In servlet, could you write a parameterized constructor which was accessible, which was called by the container? In servlet, could you write a parameterized constructor? Answer is we could write. But was it getting called by the container? 100% not. Spring container is smarter than, more capable than the container. So here the answer becomes yes. So we are entering a next wiring style, which is called as constructor based DI. It is not a rocket science. It is not a concept which has been, which has been founded by Spring. Constructor, parameterized constructor were already there in the market. We are just making use of it. So when I say in the middle of night, later, not today, not tonight, tomorrow onwards maybe. So constructor-based DI means what? Will you continue to use default constructor or will you need to supply a parameterized constructor? Answer is already there. Parameterized constructor. Next question, guys. How many arguments, how many parameters will you pass to this parameterized constructor? Try again. Improve your answer. I don't know which three you are talking about, Rakesh. Sorry to say. Don't say that. I want a better answer. Okay, I'll give you exactly. Ragini got it right. Girish got it right. One per dependency. Guys, it is the same as how many setters we were writing earlier? One per dependency. So now we are talking about a parameterized constructor, which will have one per, as many arguments as per your dependencies. Can you overload it further? Yes, but generally we don't require. And so this is what we will do in the next minute in the bean tag, not bean tag, in the dependent bean class. And which was the tag here to supply to tell it is setter based DI? Property tag. Property tag is replaced by a constructor argument tag. See the name, constructor argument. Naturally, it is quite clear to the container that this is the way to call the parameterized constructor. And again, you can supply the name of what? Name of the constructor argument. And if it is a fixed value, if it is a value type, you inject it via value. If it is a reference, dependency being reference, you'll inject it by ref. So tell me the difference between the two. When you use constructor-based dependency injection, will those dependencies be available to? Your choices are parameterized constructor, init, both of above, none of above. Answer is both of above. Absolutely. Because first the constructor will get called and then the init method. So why don't we test it and take a break. So close everything. What you are going to require maximum practice on the combination singleton and eager. So don't make the copy of day 14.2. This reserve it for your prototype. Reserve it for playing with the bean life cycle. So go to the first one and let's make a copy 14.3. I am just maintaining it day 14.3. So it becomes easier also, for me to share. And you can close earlier things. Now I'm not going to change. Singleton and eager is the combination we'll continue with. And here, just form.xml. Make it all day 14.3. Replace all. And force update. And then we will replace only one thing, setter-based dependency injection by the constructor-based DI. You let me know when the change is, when the copy is made. Then the copy. Let's wait for more. Done? Okay. So guys, now I'm telling you, you are going to revise the whole thing. But when I say revise the whole thing, please don't waste your time in looking at each and everything. So here onwards, just look at dependent bean and the configuration file, nothing else. Tester is going to be the same. Okay, so tell me, when I want to replace setter-based DI by constructor-based DI, will you need this setter? I want to show you constructor-based DI. Of course not. Get rid of it. Remove it. Gone. But currently, there's no dependency injection. So again, you'll start getting null pointers when you call the business logic method. So tell me, if I want to exercise, if I want to show you constructor-based DI, default constructor or parameterized constructor? Parameterized. How many arguments, please? Number. Currently I'm saying. Answer is 3. Answer is 1 per dependency. So how many dependencies are we injecting, Rohit? 1. So add this constructor, parameterize transport, let's say T. Or you can say something weird. You'll know why weird in a minute. And here, initialize. This we had done. Only thing is I generally start with setter based AI. So I explained the setter based dependency injection first. So I can say my transport is equal to T1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll say why this weird name? In a second, you'll know why. So please tell me, will this dependency, such as the transport layer, will it be available during instantiation or will you see the null value here? Obvious stupid question, but still I'm asking. Null or not null? Of course available. Why not null? And here, because I have just initialized it. You got it? So what are the two changes I did? I removed the setter and what I added is the argument, parameterized constructor. But is this sufficient? 100% not. So open, you can see by the way, Control Shift O, so that unnecessary imports will be all gone. Now go to your XML file and you'll definitely see the red crosses. I already said this earlier. There's no default constructor. So container is looking by default for a argumentless constructor. How to tell container? There's no default constructor but constructor based AI. How to tell container that this is a parameterized? Yeah, which one? Constructor argument tag. So guys, is it going to be a setter based AI or is it going to be a constructor based AI now? It is going to be constructor based AI. Okay, so this is it. Constructor based dependency injection. And all you replace is, you get this already, constructor argument tag. Just take the cursor there. Bean definitions can specify 0 or more constructor arguments. Okay, so it is basically calling a parameterized constructor. You can close the tag here. Please don't close the bean tag here. We are closing it here. So be careful. I mean, just a little bit of opening and closing tag. And here, again, you have the same. Now anyone, okay, don't do that. So tell me, what will be the name you will supply? You have to supply the name and the ref. So what will be the name you will supply? Exactly. This is why I gave a weird name. So what has to match with what? The name of the constructor argument has to match there. So that was my only point. Where is it? Yeah. So name and just say control space. It has already applied something called as a reflection. Reflection means finding out the information about the bean classes, which I'll discuss separately. And is it going to be a value or is it going to be a dependency bean reference? Value or ref? Ref. And you can inject whatever you want. So suppose I want to inject HTTP maybe, anything. So finish it. I'll ask you before running what will be the output and we'll take a 10 minutes break. You done the changes? There should not be any red crosses and all that. There could be a warning here. So ignore the warning, it will work. Okay, so let me ask you. When we run the application, when the Spring container starts, boots, when you create the class path XML application context instance, tags will be called or skipped. 100% called. Why? Singleton and eager. I have not mentioned the scope. Default scope is singleton. And what is the loading policy of a singleton by default? Eager. So that does it. Is it going to execute this tag? 100% yes. Again, the answer is singleton eager. Guys, we spend a lot of time on bean lifecycle with a lot of changes. This is now only wiring part, which I'm discussing. So coming back to the point, this will get executed. So you will see ATM implementation constructor. And then after that, at that point, here is the dependency it will try to inject. So tell me, is this dependency already created or is it going to create it at this point? Answer is already created. You can always play with the scopes and all and do whatever. Just get comfortable with the whole job. So it is already there and you will see in a minute here in constructor of whatever ATM constructor and this will be not null. So confirm, open the tester, D14.3 tester. You can remove, what is that? Test ATM, because it was just before Spring, and you can have that test Spring. And run this and see if your understanding expected meets the actual. So check. All three singleton eager dependencies created. This is where your parameterized constructor-based DI. And is the dependency injected right at the instantiation time? Very much yes. Using default constructor or parameterized constructor, and after all dependency injection, then the init method is called. So now the dependency is available right from the instantiation, which was never possible in a servlet. Servlet's dependency was servlet config. You could, I mean, it was web container. Web container wasn't flexible. It was kind of a rigid type. Okay, so it was injecting it after the constructor and before the init. Here you see the change. And so by the time the container starts, what is the memory picture? How many beans are created in the heap? How many beans are created right at the power on condition, right at the container startup? It's 4, absolutely. And is there any connection? Is there any wiring established? Answer is yes, all done by the container. And what is the wiring between? You can see that. So there's the answer here. So ATM bean is already connected or injected with HTTP reference. Since it is a singleton, ref1 double equal to ref2. Even if you say context.get bean 10 times, it is going to share the same bean instance. And for singleton bean, destroy hook does get called. So all those statements are not important. I mean, we already made this. So please focus on constructor-based DI. Understanding things, finding it clear, finding it easy to get it, understanding the Spring containers behavior and the wiring part. Easy or difficult, easy or hard. Honest answer is expected. If you say hard, I'll accept it as hard, no problem. You are finding it easy, great. So let's have a 10 minutes break here and resume at 1:10. Welcome back. Let's continue to look at more wiring in Spring. So what is it we have talked about so far was setter-based dependency injection and constructor-based DI. Is there any way, is it possible to combine these two? When I say combine, let me say this properly. Is it possible for a particular dependent bean to inject certain dependencies in a constructor-based manner? I mean, using the parameterized constructor, and some of the dependencies using setter-based? Answer is yes. It is completely flexible framework. It doesn't say that when you use setter-based DI, you can't use constructor-based DI or vice versa. So it is as per your need. So generally, I take an example which will reach you faster. So I'm just thinking, let's make a copy. Yeah, let's make a copy. Or okay, I'll just say it verbally. I'll not waste time, because looking at time, we need to start with auto wiring. So let me say this. Ours is a ATM scenario. I'll get it done in the lab, or you can try it in the lab. Ours is a ATM scenario. So when the customer walks in, or okay, let me say this properly. Even before the customer walks in, ATM machine should be deposited with the cash. Everyone knows there is a bank, there is a, van, a proper secure van comes in and loads the ATM with the cash. Are you understanding what I'm saying? It's a simple business scenario. So what I'm saying is, even before the customer comes in, right early in the morning or sometime, their timings may differ, they are depositing the cash. And when the customer walks in, customer can withdraw money, and then at that time, after the transaction is done, the ATM can inform the underlying bank that this and this transaction happened. So this is the business scenario I'm asking you a question about. So there are two dependencies now I'm talking about. One is ATM is dependent upon the cache component, and ATM is dependent upon the transport layer. right? So we are talking about this. This you are going to configure in lab, because looking at time, I don't want to spend time there now. So how many properties, how many properties will you declare in ATM implementation class? Simple question, simple answer. Two properties, I said. So one dependent can have multiple dependencies. Dependencies are nothing but the properties. Understood or not understood? Why only one response? Others also. Okay. So now tell me, out of that, which is the dependency, which is the mandatory required kind of dependency, which has to be done right at the starting time, cache. So now tell me, how will you configure, how will you inject cache, which will be a better option, setter based DI or constructor based DI? Are you understanding? You are so right. I'm so glad to see the correct answer, because that means you are understanding things. Of course, we will make it available right at the time the instance of the ATM is getting created, so that you can configure it as a constructor based DI. Next question, since you answered me so well. What will be the data type of a cache component? What will be the data type of a cache? Any idea? Any suggestion? Give me some answer. I'm there to correct you. What will be the data type of this cache property? Reference. Cache will refer to something. Come on. A double value, a int value, or a long value. It's a value of a cache. So I'm asking you, you will be writing constructor argument, name equal to, let's say, cache or initial cache or whatever. And what will you use? Name and a ref pair or name and a value pair? Are you understanding me? What will you use? Of course, name and a value, because here you are injecting the value. Currently, we will just hard code something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types. So that is the constructor based dependency, value based. Now let's stretch the story ahead. Now, after the customer walks in and he or she performs the transaction, after the transaction, I have to inform the bank. So which is the dependency which will do the informing the bank? Transport layer. So now answer. How would you like to configure it? In the constructor based DI or in setter based DI? This can come in later. Later means not much later. Just after the init method, it is available. So this is what I'm going to give you as a quick question and all that, and you can configure. And once you say setter, you should have the property tag. And once I say that constructor based DI, you will have a constructor argument tag. Making sense? Can you visualize? So these are the main ones you will end up using. I told you, you'll not directly use them, but somewhere when you use at AutoWire, that annotation, internally this will be used. So coming back to the last part of explicit wiring. So the last part is here, just a second. Okay. So here, if let me put up the story properly. If you don't provide any setters, can you use setter based dependency? Not you. Can container use setter based dependency injection? Answer is no. If you don't add any parameterized constructor, all you passed is a default argumentless constructor. Is constructor based DI possible? Answer is no. So in that case, can we still, not we is a wrong word, can Spring Container still supply the dependencies, or can it still perform the DI? Answer is yes. And that is your last one. So what is it? It is factory method based dependency injection. So see the write-up. When you can make your constructor private for singletoning, typically you use that. So even when you have a private constructor, or you can say default argumentless constructor, in short, not useful constructor and no setters, container can still do the factory-based dependency injection. But before I continue to point 2.3 or whatever, I'm telling you, you invest least amount of time here, because you'll understand the reason soon. You still have to do a lot of things in this approach. Container does less and you have to slog more. And the even better answer is, after this, when I take you to automatic wiring mode, there is no equivalent step here. So then why I'm spending your time? Exam objective only. Okay. So now read further things. you may not provide any constructor, or you just might provide a private constructor for all that, no setters, but you have to provide now, you as a programmer, dependent bean developer, ATM implementation, provide a factory method. So when I say factory method, you have heard the words bean factory, session factory. Factory is nothing but a producer pattern. Okay. So when I say factory method, it is not going to be associated with any instance. It is going to return the object. Okay. So here you have to write a factory method is equal to public static method. Why public static? I mean, why public? Spring container is going to call it automatically. Why static? Because it is not associated with any instance. It is going to return the instance to the caller, and the return type will be instance type. So let me ask you, what will be the return type of our factory method in our case? Can you tell me the return type of that factory method which we are going to write in the minute? Anyone wants to tell me what is going to be the return type? It's a bean instance. So just give me the name. Which bean want to be created? No answer. No. Transport is what we will be injecting. No. This factory method will be returning the dependent bean instance. Which is the dependent bean instance in our case? ATM implementation. So that way. You'll know it. I know you're not getting it, but you will get it after in 2 minutes whenever we write. So this is a factory. This is a provider, not for dependencies. Dependencies will be passed as the arguments. Okay, so this is not for dependency. This is for dependent bean provider. Okay, see guys, your Spring container is a supplier of dependencies as well as dependents, but you will have to write a factory method providing that. In 2 minutes, it will be clear. But as usual, Spring container is not a magician. So how will it know? Somebody had asked me early, I think Himanshu and Ansumala. So here they had asked me, how does container know that which is your init method, destroy method? In the similar manner, how does container know that this is your factory method? No worries. There is a tag. I'm sorry, not tag, attribute. In the bean tag, there is an attribute called as a factory method. And here we will supply the name of the factory method. Okay. And good news is, repetitive thing is, how do you supply those arguments to the factory method? Nothing but the same old constructor argument tag. So I have a question for you. So because before writing, I just want to, find out the answer. So in case, suppose I have got 10 dependencies, in my dependent bean. Suppose I have got, let me say, the transport, I've got cash, I've got something like, some ID, suppose some COVID test or some, COVID screening, something, COVID test result, rapid test result, something. I can think of 10 different dependencies. So if your ATM bean has 10 different dependencies, how many factory methods you will write? Here answer is 1. But how many arguments will you pass to that factory method? Give me the answer. 1 per dependency makes it 10. And naturally, how many constructor argument tag you will have to supply in that bean tag? 1 or 10? Answer is again 10, 1 per dependency. So I'm telling you guys, even though it sounds fancy, factory method and all, Spring container hardly uses it in the more realistic picture. So we are just going to learn it at an exam level. So let's make use of it. Control-Shift-W, make a copy. You can make a copy from earlier one, 14.3 to 14.4. Copy pasted, and just change that, all of that. Okay, replace all, close. Just make a copy and update it. I'll wait. So I'm going to give you a one-liner instruction. So anytime you start, you come up for the lab session, please open that advanced Java. It is not only assignments, you know that. I give you how to revise in a quickest possible manner. So do refer to that. Anyway, so I think you are done here. Can I continue? What is it? What were you looking at, Girish? Wiring. So that was the diagram I was explaining. What else you require? I don't know. So here, open the dependent bean. What is it you're looking at? Spring wiring diagram. So this is the diagram I have. Nothing else. You don't require anything else. Anyway, open the dependent bean. Tell me. Here, this is your parameterized constructor. Can it be called by the Spring container directly? It's a Boolean question. Yes or no? Can this be called by the Spring container? No. Is this seriously? Are you saying this answer? No. What did you study then in the constructor-based AI? Of course, it is callable by the container. But now tell me, is it invocable? Is it visible? Is it callable by the by the Spring container? Now answer is no. Guys, don't make simple mistakes. If it is a public parameterized constructor, you have learned in the earlier 10 minutes, constructor argument tag, and it was very much callable. But the moment I hide it, is it accessible? Will it be called? Okay, I'll rephrase the question. If I make the constructor private, will, what is it called? Constructor based AI, can it take place or can it not? I mean, can or cannot? Of course can't. Are you getting it? Because it's not visible. If it cannot call the constructor, how can it do? So leave it aside. There are no setters, as you can see. So here we are adding your factory method. Okay. So this factory method is typically, because it has to be accessible, visible to the Spring container public. And why it is going to be static? Because it is going to return that ATM implementation instance. Factory is equal to provider, factory of cars, factory of TVs, factory of electronic gadgets or whatever. It is a supplier, producer. Okay, so public static. This will have the return type will be the instance type or whatever, the dependent bean, for example. So in short, in our case, it will be ATM implementation, some name. So let's say my factory, any name, because you're going to code it. And then what arguments will you pass? So these arguments will be nothing but representing dependencies. Okay. So this is the pattern of your factory method or factory pattern, provider pattern. So public static ATM implementation. This is the factory of the dependent bean, provider of the dependent bean. And you can give any name, including my factory, and listen to the question. Forget the compiler, just saying you are not returning anything. If you don't pass any arguments, will factory-based AI work or will it fail? Of course it will fail. Because then the whole thing, I mean, you have no dependencies to be injected. So here, which dependency I will inject? What will be the argument here? Anyone wants to answer? The argument, please. Transport layer. Because that is what is our dependency. The transport and cache you will manage. I'm just working on transport layer. Okay. So suppose I say transport T. Anything. You got it? So here. So now, answer the question with a slight thought. Who is going to call this method, factory method? You have two choices, programmer or Spring container, P or SC. 100% Spring container. This is your dependency injection. Write out a line. This is your factory method based DI. The moment I say dependency injection, is it a conventional programming or is it a IOC, inversion of control, or traditional conventional programming? Of course, it is IOC. So instead of you managing the dependencies, container is doing stuff for you. In short, who will be calling this method? This method will be invoked by Spring container. How? You will have to give him guidelines. We'll give that in a XML file. So now we are here. So just add a one-liner, I mean SOP in factory, and here, sorry, this is the dependency. So now answer me, can this static method call the private constructor of this class? Can I invoke the constructor, or I can't? I as a factory method. Of course, yes, you are in the same class. So yes, you can. And here, I'm just doing it in one line. New ATM implementation and passing the transport layer here. Nothing fancy about it. Just doing it. So waiting for you to finish one-liner or two-liners. So tell me, who is calling this factory method? Programmer or Spring container? Who will be calling this? 100% Spring container. But who is creating the dependent bean instance? A programmer. You have to slog. You had to call from that factory method a constructor. So you are calling. In short, dependent bean. So not really. I mean, our job is not increasing. I am sorry. Our job is not reducing. It is increasing. In earlier versions, it was not required. Everything was done by the container. That is why the reason you will hardly see it. I mean, hardly. Okay, you will very only exam objective type you'll use it. Otherwise you won't use it. So creating the dependency bean and injecting the dependency still you have to manage. Container cannot see it the moment you make the constructor as parameterless or private constructor. So here, programmer has to manage creation of dependent bean and DI also, dependency injection also. I mean, okay, and passing the dependency. Since it involves a lot of involvement from our side, this is not a, recommended approach. So this finishes one side. Now, you cannot just do it this way. You will have to write the corresponding XML instruction. Open the XML file, please. Day 14.4. SRC main resources, bean configuration XML file. And how do you tell the container that this is my factory method? Add a tag. The name of the tag is wrong. Sorry. Attribute, I mean. Tag is a bean tag. So the name of the attribute itself is factory method. Read. Later read it whole. So the name of the factory method to use to create this object. So which object we want to create? ATM implementation. So that is the name. And then it has arguments, and those arguments you are supplying with the constructor argument tag. Okay. So here is the factory method, control space. Why it is understanding it immediately? Why? How come it understands it? It applies the factory pattern, public static, and instance returning method. I've written only one factory method, so understands it. And here, if you just say here, control space, this is your constructor argument name, understood by the reflection. So this part does not change. This part is the same. And the part which changes is, it is not calling. It means we are not, your container is not calling the constructor. We are calling the constructor via the factory method. So I hope you made the change. It's a small change. That's why I asked you to run it from earlier one. Run the test spring and observe. Once you see the problem, you understand it in a best manner. So is it working or is it not working? Tell me. Exception or not exception? Did I make somebody saying factory? What is it? So I've written the factory method properly. So guys, get used to troubleshooting. That is what is the skill you are going to require most in your projects. So see the error. OS, BF, unsatisfied dependency exception. Keep reading. It says error creating the bean my ATM. So it is unable to create a my ATM. And here through the method parameter 0 ambiguous argument, etc. I don't want to this thing. Anyone wants to tell me my mistake, intentional mistake. The story is it has not started. It has not worked. The whole Spring container failed to start. Anyone wants to tell? Yes, okay, you are right. Guys, the answer is in the exception message. You have to be smart. And one more thing, guys. Okay, let me say this for once for all. Just a second. Okay, let me say something. I'll come to this part. Anytime you need my help, not now. I mean, now also, but in project phase, you definitely require, because there are so many issues and finally you get frustrated and seek some help. So at that time, will be not on a daily basis in touch. So if you want to send me, typically I tell, capture entire this thing, what is it called? Entire stack trace. Do not create a photo. It's a shortcut. I will say why you have a problem with our pics. I don't have a problem, but I can't even scroll. I can't even see the full error message. So take that effort, guys. Copy the entire stack trace, put it in a text file and send that file. So at least I can scroll up and down. I can scroll horizontally and find out the root cause. If you yourself can find the root cause, you don't need me. You don't need my help. So coming back to the point, where are we? So see this unsatisfied dependency, and it tells you so clearly. Read this. You just have to be smart enough in reaching the root cause. Tell me. Already Swapni, like I think somebody already pointed it out to me. So here, is it passing? Is it finding the correct argument? Or is it not finding the argument correctly? Quickly, guys, I want to take something more. Of course, it is having a problem. And it is all about matching. The whole thing is about matching. So tell me, what is the name of the, where is my bean? What is the name? Purposefully, I do things to, to highlight a point. What is the name of the factory method argument? Is it T or is it T1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It's T, right? So now, okay, let me ask you the question. What is it your Spring container going to call? Factory method, constructor, both of above, none of above? Only the factory method. So how can you do this, right? So replace it by T, observe and conclude. The whole thing has to be done in a whatever observation and conclusion manner, because it becomes so easy to reach things. Tell me, working or still throwing the exception? Are you understanding the point I'm trying to make? With one such word, I hope the things are clearer. So now go through it and we'll enter. I'll just give you the idea about AutoWire and then we'll stop. Okay, so here as before, this is all singleton and eager. So not an issue. Now, your container comes to the bean tag of ATM. So tell me, is ATM implementer singleton or prototype? ATM bean, S or P? Singleton. Lazy or eager? Eager. So it will start executing the bean. Then I am just telling you the internals of Spring container, nothing else. So when it starts, see, it checks the scope, then it checks the lazy init policy, singleton and eager. Then it looks at what it looks at. It looks at a factory method and it starts calling that factory method. How do you know whether we are correct or wrong? That is why so many SOPs. Are you getting it? So who is calling the factory method? A programmer or a container? Container. I never called it. You saw the code. We never have to call it. This is factory-based DI. But who had to call this constructor specifically? A programmer. So is it truly like you don't have to do anything, and is it a full IOC or is it only partial IOC? It's only partial IOC, guys. The factory method gets called, no doubt. But still you have to slog in calling the constructor, passing the dependency and all, too much of work. So, but you can see it is working. And then in it, I mean, this itself, the dependency is injected. In it onwards, it is the same. Container starts happily. The moment you matched. So what had to match with what? The name of the constructor argument had to match with the factory method argument. When you are relaxed and in the lab, please check all these things, play with the code as usual. And since it is singleton, okay, sorry, we are using that HTTP transport layer. Because it is singleton, it is all single instance shared, so true. And destroy method is also getting called. So now don't focus on it. Focus only on factory-based DI. Understood something? Understood the working of the container? Okay. So this is what is nothing but explicit wiring. So have a quick recap. I'll give you in 5 more minutes, the auto wiring part. We'll just do one auto wiring and we'll stop, promise. Okay, so here, what is it we were talking about? 2 modes of wiring. Which is the mode we were which is the mode we are working in currently? Explicit wiring. So explicit wiring is what? You have to supply, you as a Spring developer, you have to supply a lot of information. Means what? You have to write the setters if you are using setter-based DI. You have to supply the constructor or constructors, overloaded constructors, parameterized constructors, or you have to write a factory method, correct? Depending on which DI you are using. Plus, you have to use lot of XML. I told you, you'll have 10 different property tags for 10 dependencies. 10 constructor argument tags and 10 constructor argument tags here. So, is there any shortcut? Meaning, do people seriously come to Spring for such an elaborate one? Absolutely not. The USP of Spring is auto wiring. So that is what we are entering. But like I said, I can't skip the steps in between, because when I say it is nothing but automatic auto wire by name is nothing but setter based DI, etc., you will not understand. So focus. When we talk about auto wiring, Spring team calls it as auto magical and all that, because it is literally sounds like a magical process. So anyway, so auto wiring. So which part is reduced and which part is still the same? So is there any relief in Java code? Answer is no. So if you go for, there is something called as automatic wiring by name and by type. So these are nothing but setter based DI. So here, will you still have to write setters? 100% yes. If you go by auto wire equal to constructor, the third option, will you have to still write a parameterized constructor? Yes. So in short, is there any reduction in Java code, or is it same as earlier? Same as earlier. But is there any reduction? This is a wrong statement. Is there the same amount of XML configuration, or is it reduced? Answer is it is reduced. So this is a wrong statement. No XML configuration is wrong, but some things will reduce. For example, property tags or your constructor argument tags will all reduce to 0. So what is auto wire? Auto wire is a attribute. I'm not written about this. Oh yeah, I have written. I was not sure. Whether in the same file or some other. So here, I've given in the detailed sequence manner what you should refer to. So everyone 100% is going to refer to this. So read this much only. We will do that in next 5 minutes and stop immediately. Or maybe we'll just read it, I'll explain and we'll stop. The coding part, I can even take it in labs if you want. Just read this much, please. Okay, so you know the bean tag. Which are the attributes of the bean tag you already know? You know ID, you know class, you know scope, lazy init, init method, destroy method, and a factory method. So now I'm introducing the next attribute, which is heart of automatic wiring. So let me bring you to a point properly. So what is the meaning of wiring? Making the dependencies available to dependent objects is equal to wiring. But when I say auto wiring, what do they mean? Will you need any XML configuration such as property tag, constructor argument tag in the XML? No, that will be all reduced to 0. So who is going to resolve this automatically? Answer of who is, Spring Container. When I mean a container, of course, a Spring Container. Okay, so there are 4 values for this auto wire attribute. One is no. No auto wiring means explicit wiring, which is what we spent time earlier, with the property tag, with the constructor argument tag, factory method, etc. But other values are, one is by name, one is by type, and the third one is constructor. So now, okay, so this is the write-up. Anyone wants to read it in the readme style, you refer to this. I generally prefer a diagram. So here, I'll just give you overview and we'll stop. I was thinking of writing the first one. I discarded that, looking at time. And already people are dropping off. So when you say auto wire by name, what is it still you will have to provide? Okay, sorry. Forget the question, scratch the question. Let me give you the overview first. When you say by name or by type, is it internally based upon setter based DI or constructor based DI? Already written there. It is part of setter based DI. When I take you to constructor tomorrow, then it is a constructor based DI. Okay. So now what is common between the two things? You still have to provide the setters. How many setters, please, guys? 1 per dependency. If there are 5 dependencies, you will end up writing 5 setters. So is there any reduction in your bean tag? I'm so sorry. In the bean class, dependent bean class, answer is no. But what reduces? Here, 0 property tags. So those property tags which were, 1 per dependency, if there are 10 dependencies, 10 tags. So all those 10 tags reduce to 0. And that will be replaced by 1 attribute, auto wire. So when you say, now there is a slight difference, not slight, a huge difference. When you say by name, Spring Container is going to automatically try to match the property setter names. For example, I've got a setter, set email, set password, or what was that? Set transport or set my transport, whatever, has to match with the bean ID. So if you don't give any setters, we'll see tomorrow or today evening if you want what happens. So actually I've given the answer. Container tries to do the matching its level best. But if there is no match, container says, hey, it is your problem. I was trying to match it. You never supplied any matching. So container doesn't throw the exception. But if you don't give any match, will DI take place? Will dependency injection succeed or will it not happen? I mean, will it happen or will it not happen? Of course, it will not happen. And the moment you try to call your business logic method using those dependencies, what will you get? Null pointer exception or will it work fine? If the dependencies are not injected, of course, you will get a null pointer and the whole thing will break. But the point is, will Spring Container throw any exception? If the match is not found, answer is no. So guys, it will treat these auto-wire dependencies as optional dependencies. Optional, mandatory. So it will say, okay, if you give me a matching, I'll set it. I'll call the setter. Otherwise, your problem, your choice. So then when I take you to auto wire by type, this is the maximum important one. Because today I'm talking all in XML. Tomorrow I'll be talking in less XML, majority annotation, which is called as a hybrid approach. So that time you'll see majority when you use that at auto wired annotation, it is equivalent to automatic wiring by type. So you'll see again the same story. Only thing is here everything was matched with property names, setter names. Here it will be matched with property data type. And same thing will be done with a parameterized constructor in auto wire by constructor. So anyway, so this is where I'm stopping. So my suggestion is, I'll make my suggestions in the instruction, advanced Java instructions, whatever that file. So you will definitely revise. You will play with the code, understand fully the Spring Bean life cycle with that diagram, and everyone will thoroughly revise the explicit wiring part. And if you allow me, I can just take examples of auto wiring by name, by type in the lab session itself. But if you say no, we are like, we don't want to learn anything, you are calm. If we do this, tomorrow's efforts will be lesser, but it all goes by your majority thing. And one thing we are going to do, whether you want it or not, this whole revision part will get over in, I'm sure, in 1 to 1.5 hours is what I'm guessing. So again, we have a backlog. So we will continue with that Web Maven Hibernate. In short, that CMS, you remember that content management system. So we just finished it yesterday till that authentication part. So we will take it forward. And since our focus is mainly porting the DAO layer to your whatever, what is that? JDBC based DAO layer to your Hibernate, we'll finish the DAO layer completely. So you'll have again a revision, and then at least the admin part. I mean, I'm trying to focus on admin part, and that will be the last revision for JSP Java Bean, because tomorrow onwards our Hibernate will be the same, but the front end means not real React front end. I'm talking about that JSP Java Bean will be replaced by Spring MVC. So that and much more I have planned. Let's see what all we can finish in the lab session, hands-on session in the labs. So see you around. Follow the instructions and do your revision before I join the labs. And we will continue with your questions and doubts and everything later. That will be all. See you in the labs.